Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammi and Nath Jaeger.
Hello, and welcome to a brand new week of Date Forever. In this week's episode, we'll be chatting about the Fuel Collective Fueled Up Life methodology, the 8 fuel tanks that this is broken into, and the lessons that we've learnt throughout our relationship relating to each tank. But before we kick off with that, Sammi, what's been fueling you up this week?
I ticked another goal off the list for 2021.
Oh yeah, what was it?
I had my second girls' weekend away.
Amazing.
For the year. So I had set out the intent that I definitely wanted to have one, and now I've had 2. And we're only halfway through the year.
So you've doubled down already.
Yeah, so it was really important to me that this year I carved out some time for my friendships and my relationships and that wider network, because 2020 was very little of that.
It was a very slow year.
Yeah. So I had the long weekend away with, I think there was 6 of us. We got a house up the coast, nice Airbnb, ate, drank, merry, laughed, and it was beautiful.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah, it was really nice. And the Airbnb that we got was about, I don't know, it probably should have been about 3 hours away, but being long weekend traffic, it was a little bit longer, both ways. And I had offered to carpool, but everyone had their own way. So I was on my own, and I had some time in the car on my own to think and podcast and audiobook.
Had a bit of Sammy's self-time.
Yeah, which I am craving. What about you, Nath? What's been fueling you up this past week?
So over this past weekend, I did a bit of adventuring with my parents because they were in town this week. But one of the really beautiful things that we did was just go for a hike out on the coast, and we saw a bunch of whales out in the ocean, which was really amazing.
How many whales did you see?
So I think we were out there watching the whales for probably an hour or so, and I think we saw about 6 all up. But initially, we didn't actually go there for whale watching necessarily, but we just were going for a walk around this little island and just actually heard something in the distance and looked up, and we saw a whale really close to shore, which was really cool.
What a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, it was really nice. So I just really love connecting with nature a little bit and, kind of experiencing something new and just exciting.
Yeah, sounds super fun.
Yeah, it was. But let's dive on into the Fueled Up Life methodology. So what the heck is this all about?
So we've talked a little bit about the origin story of Fuel Collective on the show a couple of times, but it was really born from a place of frustration.
Yeah, it was. Definitely. For the 2 of us.
Yeah, so we had been together, we'd been married coming up 5 years. And we were kind of at a point in our lives where we had proximity to quite a few of our really close friends going through some really icky breakups and in some cases divorce. So other than having some conversations around that time, we didn't really do anything with this new awareness.
No, we didn't. We just were observing this as an outsider, looking into other people's relationships and thinking that there has to be something that has caused this, or maybe there's something that they could have done differently, because we thought that these people would be together forever.
Yeah, and there were couples that we, hand on heart, thought these are each other's people forever. Absolutely. and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
And then you look at the marriage stats in Australia.
They're pretty horrific, aren't they?
Yeah, with still almost 50% of marriages ending in divorce. It's not quite 50%, but it's near enough 1 in 2.
Close enough. Yeah.
Yeah, and as we started to unpack, well, why does that happen? Why do couples break up? Why do they go their separate ways? And I feel like I need a little asterisk, little disclaimer here. I don't think that people should be together forever and ever and ever. Sometimes the very best thing for people to do is recognize that their relationship has run its course and it's served each other. But
they're heading in different directions.
Yeah, they want different things, and that they could be healthier, happier, going about life separately. So I want to caveat this conversation with that. But I do really believe that there are quite a few relationships that with the right tools in their toolbox could absolutely work through some of the hurdles that they come across.
Yeah. Navigate some of the tricky situations in life.
Yeah, so when we were looking at the couples that we'd seen go through some really yucky kind of stuff, we noticed a pattern that one or both of the people in the partnership had come from homes where their parents or family weren't necessarily together. Or if they were still together, it didn't necessarily mean that they had a healthy, happy, thriving relationship that they would want to model.
And when we kind of looked into that a bit further, we kind of realized that there's not really anywhere that people can actually learn how to have a healthy, happy, thriving relationship. And really, the way that we learn it is from observing other people. And obviously, the closest people to us are our parents while we're growing up.
Yeah, so we sort of started digging around and looking at what was like in the market. And we recognized that there's quite a lot of information out there for people who are dating, who are trying to find their person.
Yeah. And then again, for people who are just about to get married.
Yeah, and then there's kind of a bit of a gap where there's quite a few resources for, you've been together for a little bit, you're married, maybe you've got some kids, and things are losing their shine and they're not so great anymore. There seems to be quite a few resources for that sort of stage of your relationship.
And then the far end of the relationship where the relationship's almost gone already and you're headed for divorce regardless of what happens.
Yeah, so we kind of realized that there's this gap where people feel like they maybe have found their person, or they're definitely in a relationship where they've got long-term intent, but there's not really a lot of resources for them to figure out whether or not it is the right relationship or if this is their forever and ever kind of person. So if we aren't being taught those kind of emotional intelligence, relationship skills at conventional school, and then in our homes, we're likely to have been raised by a family who make up part of that 50% statistic. Where are you meant to learn it? Where are you meant to develop a really solid blueprint for a healthy, happy, thriving relationship?
And the other thing we noticed too was that even if your parents are still together and do have a really great, thriving relationship, all you're seeing is really what they're actually showing you. So unless you actually really went behind the curtains and understood what it is that is keeping their relationship really great, you probably aren't actually seeing it as an outside observer.
Yeah, so we sat on this idea for quite a while, like years.
We did, yeah.
Literal years of like, well, there's this gap in the market and nobody's talking to this stage. Yeah, so a few years definitely went by and we had these reoccurring conversations like regularly about what are the tips, tricks, tools, resources, ideas that we've discovered in our own relationship that maybe other people don't know or aren't actively looking for.
Yeah. Some of these things were really big things for our relationship and other ones were just tiny little things that we might do that have really helped us to keep the spark alive. So it was at about this time that some other really great friends of ours told us that they were going to go their separate ways and were in the process of separating and heading for divorce.
And this couple, this blindsided me. We weren't living in the same state at that time. And these friends had come and stay with us for the weekend. And they turned up at our place together and we welcomed them open arms and sat down, cracked a bevy and were sitting down, have a chat, have a good catch up. We hadn't seen them for, maybe a couple of months or more in person. And they shared their news and that they were done. And by this point, this wasn't one or two or three. This was a substantial handful or pattern, a group.
Yeah, it seemed like it was a recurring thing that we were seeing with all of these amazing weddings that we had been to.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what it was about this last particular couple who were sharing this news and moving through this next stage of life, but we were reflecting that we were in our early 30s and we already know a dozen or more couples that have been through very serious breakups and divorces. And I'm not exactly sure what the pin drop was or what the
trigger was.
Yeah, but there was a recognition that we could probably do something, And although we are not the experts, and we don't claim to be the experts, we're not relationship therapists, we're not coaches, we're not psychologists or any of that. We're just a very normal couple who are deeply passionate about fueling up our relationship. And what if we gathered the people who are the experts, the people who have figured some of this stuff out, and brought it all together into one home where couples could come to keep their relationship fueled up so that it never ran out of fuel. So in lieu of being an expert, the very next best thing that we could do was to actively collect and curate the tools, tips, resources that we had already discovered across the first decade or more of our relationship.
And there was plenty when we started digging into it and looking into it.
Yeah, and then we realized that we had been collecting quite a few tools in our toolbox. And maybe some of these things would have been really valuable to know earlier on.
And not every tip or trick or method is going to work for every one person, but what we had done along the way was look at some of these things, try them on, adapt them to ourselves, and then really embed them into our relationship.
Yeah, so this idea of the fueled up method really came from identifying the patterns that we had in our relationship, but also in the relationships that we were observing around us. So Nath and I already had a practice of doing our annual game planning where we were looking at our year in review and what went well and what didn't and what do we want to do differently next year. And we started to recognize that our lives were really made up of these reoccurring areas, these different parts that were always popping up again and again. And sometimes those areas of life were going really well and other times they were lacking a little bit, or sometimes they were just utter train wrecks. So we started to group together the different questions that we were asking about the different areas of our life. And what we realized were that they really showed up in these 8 categories mostly. So from those 8 categories, we then started to unpack, well, what makes up a really great area of our life? So, for example, one of the things that we were continually struggling with was running our household. So there were these questions that would pop up again and again about what are the things in our house that we could automate or systemize or eliminate or delegate, or how could we make this element of our lives better?
Or easier. Some of these were real pain points that had been occurring year after year after year and were always propping up as issues. And so we just thought there has to be a better way.
So as we were unpacking the areas of our lives that were reoccurring, we started to ask other people about the different areas of their lives and what was going well for them and what was going not so well and what was just utterly being neglected or ignored.
So pulling all of this information together, we came down to these 8 major categories that make up a fueled up life.
So the Fueled Up Life method is a collection of tools, frameworks, and principles that empower couples to have a thriving relationship. They are gathered around these 8 different fuel tanks, and we thought we might share a little snippet about each of the 8 and some of the ways that we keep each of those areas fueled up. So you may have heard us refer to these areas of life in previous episodes as the different fuel tanks of life. So when a fire burns, it needs 3 things to keep burning. It needs oxygen, heat, and fuel. What we realized is that relationships end when the willingness or the resources to keep going run out. When the tank is literally empty and you've got nothing left to give.
There's no more fuel to burn.
One of my most favorite sayings is, you can't pour from an empty cup. And when we started connecting these things together, we realized that your relationship needs fuel.
It really does.
And that fuel can look like a lot of different things. You can top up your relationship and add fuel in lots of different ways. And although there might be 8 different tanks, you don't need them to all be full all of the time. They can run at different levels of empty to full at any one point in time. But if you neglect any one area of your life or one particular fuel tank for too long, it will run out of fuel.
And that's where we found that people have run into trouble, and that we've run into trouble in our own relationship too, when one of those tanks has got to empty and has been running on empty for way too long.
So we've been banging on about these different fuel tanks.
So let's actually tell you what they are. So the first tank is self. So the relationship with yourself really sets the tone for every other relationship that you have.
The next one is romantic relationship. and it's about love being the very best thing that we do.
So number 3 is relationships and network. So if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go with others. So this is really about nurturing everyone else around you.
And then the one that we touched on already, humming household. So recognizing that how your life feels is way more important than how it looks.
So the 5th tank is career and business. So opportunities don't happen, but you create them.
Then wealth and lifestyle. Life either happens by design or default, and you get to choose. And you hear us bang on about this in the podcast around love life and be really intentional about the life that you want to live.
So tank number 7 is the world. So the secret to living is giving.
And lucky last, the future, because it isn't waiting for us, it's created by us. So once you've got a framework to really take a snapshot of your life and the different areas that make up your life, it can get really quick to diagnose what's working and what's not. So before we let it loose out into the wild, we started using it ourselves.
So initially we used it as a guide to make sure that we'd covered all areas of our relationship. But what I found over time is that every one of these categories has needed some extra fuel at one point in time.
Yeah, and what we found was that once we were able to diagnose what was working really well in our life and what needed some more fuel, it allowed us some really great focus. And we went, okay, well, that's not going so great at the moment, but it's also not the most important thing. Yeah, it just doesn't need to be a focus area right now, and it's okay to be running low for a little bit longer. Whereas other times there were fuel tanks that were looking really empty, but they wouldn't survive much longer running that way, and they needed something put back in.
So diving a little deeper into each of the tanks then. So starting with self, your relationship with yourself really sets the tone for every other relationship that you have. So after being together, even just for a little while, the lines between yourself and your partner can become a little blurry. And being an individual is a really core foundational step to a really great relationship. So making time to care for yourself and doing the things that you love is just really important, and maintaining independence and having a strong sense of self. So really, thriving couples have 3 lives. So they have mine, theirs, and ours. So the interesting thing about this self tank is what we've found is that we need to be doing the work ourselves. So I need to be looking after my own self tank, and Sammi needs to be looking after her own self tank. And this is something that we kind of need to do individually to make sure that we don't let these drop too low.
Yeah, so for us, that looks like us both keeping ourselves fit and healthy and regular routine. Sometimes they drop, and that's when we know that the tank's getting a little low and it needs some fuel and attention.
It's also about maintaining our own individual friends and really prioritizing time to spend with those and doing some of the things that we love as well, doing the hobbies that we love. So I love doing some mechanical things in the garage, and so I make sure that that's a priority and that I do actually prioritize that time to make sure that my self-tank stays full.
Yeah, whereas for me, one of my refuel behaviors is reading and listening to podcasts. I love new ideas and learning. So it's something that I do regularly to keep my self-tank fueled up.
So if you want to dive a little deeper into understanding this sense of having 3 lives, mine, theirs, and ours, jump on over and have a listen to one of our recent episodes called Striving for Interdependence and a Better Relationship. So in this episode, we really dive into this concept about having an interdependent relationship, which is that perfect balance of mine, theirs, and ours.
Yeah, and if you're a regular listener of the show, you know that we believe in dating yourself and your special person. So for me, that self thing is really about intimately knowing myself, who I am and who I want to be. Okay, tank number 2, our romantic relationship. So love really is the best thing that we do. But it is so easy for the level of effort to start diminishing, and then your person ends up getting kind of what's left of you just at the end of the day or the week. And between all the other commitments of work and friends and family and hobbies and all of those kinds of things, it often isn't much left for them. So making some effort for each other in conversation, engagement, and how you present yourself is really important. So this tank is all about knowing your shared values and living in alignment with them. Having your romantic rituals, regular date nights, celebrating each other's successes, communicating openly and authentically and vulnerability on the big and small things, and actively showing each other love via preferred love languages, and that our individual sexual needs are communicated and met, most of the time.
So within our romantic relationship, the number one thing that we do to keep our relationship fueled up is to have a continual dating practice. So we have 2x2x2 date nights. So every 2 weeks we have a date night. Every 2 months we have a night away. And every 2 years we go on a big overseas holiday. Although for us, maybe it's 2 holidays a year. So we really prioritize this practice to make sure that we are refueling this area of our life. So tank number 3 is relationships and network. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. So sometimes other people can get too involved in a relationship that isn't theirs. It could be in-laws, friends, family, or colleagues, and they're all sharing parts of your life. But knowing where all your time, energy, and resources are going is really, really important. It's really important to know what to be able to say yes to and what to be able to say no to. But it's also really important that you have other people around you to be able to share life's joys with you and to call on when times are hard. So thriving couples know where their boundaries start and enforce them with others while ensuring that their network remains really strong. So this tank is all about making sure that we have our own friendships and time to connect with our friends regularly, that our shared friendships are healthy and interactions leave us feeling full instead of empty, that we understand each other's needs around extended family and are able to meet them most of the time. We've discussed and have firm boundaries in place around how other people influence our relationship, and that we have a strong support network of friends, family, and peers to call on when we're ready to celebrate.
Or we've had a shitty day. So to keep our network and relationships tank fueled up, Nath and I have our own separate friends, and as I mentioned in our fuel up right at the beginning of the episode, we make very intentional effort to spend time alone with our friends separately. But we also then spend quite a bit of time with them shared. I think one of the best things that we do in this area is having really strong awareness about the quality of relationships that we have around us. And we do really regularly review whether or not we're leaving interactions feeling better or worse than when we spent time with people. And if it's the latter, reoccurring, then we really start to question whether or not those relationships are the right ones to keep in our life. Okay, and then tank number 4, humming household. So this is all about how your life feels being far more important than how it looks. There are so many moving parts to a household that runs seamlessly. Everything from getting bills paid on time, having food in the fridge, clean clothes to wear, and there can be an endless list of life admin tasks. Being really proactive and organized can help you avoid dropping the balls in this area, and thriving couples don't spend a lot of energy here because they have a system and plan in place to make life admin happen. When this tank is empty and everything is reactive and hard, it hurts. So this tank is all about having a shared calendar ecosystem so that you've got transparency over who's going where when, that your financial commitments are scheduled, and that you aren't expending a lot of time or mental energy to keep track of them all. You've got a strong system in place for the day-to-day household management like groceries and laundry and cooking and cleaning. And you've got a household budget, and you rarely have cash flow problems around everyday transactions. And you've got a way of capturing and prioritizing and delegating those household tasks, those little odd things like maintenance and purchasing gifts and organizing social activities.
So one of the major things that we do to keep our household humming is having all of our banking automated. So we have almost everything on direct debit. So that we're basically just set and forget all of these things, and we don't need to worry about our bills being paid on time.
Yeah, another one that we do is we order a lot of things that are like reoccurring household staples like toothpaste and laundry powder and dishwashing tablets. And cleaning supplies and Chuck's cloths and toilet paper, all of those are on subscription. So we don't ever run out of things that are really annoying to run out of. It takes a little bit of time and energy to set those things up, but they continue to pay dividends again and again and again.
And the other thing we do is play to each other's strengths and likes and dislikes in doing things around the house. So one of the things that Sammi really hates doing is vacuuming, so I make sure that I take the reins on that one. And one of the things I really hate doing is cleaning the bathroom, so Sammi takes the lead on that one.
Yeah, I definitely think having more defined kind of roles and responsibilities in our home and care tasks helps us have things run smoothly.
So the next tank is career and business. Opportunities don't happen, but you create them. So careers and business are important. They fuel us with money, purpose, and if we've got a good one, passion as well. But sometimes work can be hard and demanding, and you can definitely find yourself with more than a full-time job, both in hours in the office and time spent thinking about work outside of the office. So sometimes this can be really hard to prioritize work or other areas of your life. So communicating where you're at now and what you are striving for, both individually and as a couple, can be really important for your relationship. So thriving couples know how their own individual careers contribute to the shared life and the life plan that you've got going forward, as well as having very clear boundaries around when you need to push back on this career and business so that your other tanks aren't suffering. This tank is all about having a clear understanding of how our individual careers contribute to our overall lifestyle and future, knowing our career values and working in places that align with those, knowing what our next career step looks like for each of us and having a plan in place to get there, knowing and communicating our expectations for work and the work-life balance and harmony, and making sure that we're financially rewarded in alignment with our current career roles. So career and business is the other area that I need to take responsibility for my own destiny in. So Sammi and I have our own very different career paths, but we've also both got very clear individual development and understanding of where our careers fit into our greater plan.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something that we do well, is the transparency over like how what you do and your job and your role and your career and what I do and my role and my career, how they work together to create the life that we want to live, not just today, but into the future, the building blocks that we're creating so that we can get where we want to go. Tank number 6 is wealth and lifestyle. So life either happens by design or default, but either way you get to choose. So naturally we all have different personality types, and of course how we like to do life kind of differs. Some of us get refueled by staying in with Netflix, while other people get refueled by going out and being around people. It's not often a problem on a standalone occasion, but if you and your partner are continually at conflict about how you want to live life and what kind of things you want to spend both your time and money on, it can get really challenging. So setting up some guidelines for like how you want to spend your time, your money, your energy, and make sure that you're on the same page about the type of lifestyle that you want. Thriving couples find and keep alignment around this kind of stuff and the wealth that they want to have now and what they want to create, which makes prioritizing those other lifestyle decisions really easy. So this tank is all about knowing your current lifestyle costs, understanding your own and your partner's relationship with money, having a proactive way to manage your finance and your wealth strategy, having financial fallbacks in place in case of an emergency, things like insurances or savings, knowing whether or not you're currently living within your own means and if you're actively saving or investing money to build future wealth. This tank is really about being active with the way that you spend your time. Our wealth and our lifestyle are connected. There's no point having all the wealth in the world if your lifestyle is not what you want it to be. So when you think about lifestyle, it's also how you're spending your time. Is it where you want it to be? So in terms of wealth and lifestyle, I think one of the things that we do really well is having a really clear vision for where we want to go. And that helps in terms of how much we want to work, how much money we want to be earning, how much money we want to have in the bank, how many dollars worth of assets we want to acquire. All of those kind of things help us get really clear about the wealth that we want to generate, but also the lifestyle that we want to live. So I think because we have these conversations quite regularly and we've got a big vision board up in our home, our stretch goals of wealth and lifestyle and the life that we want to live is front of mind all the time. And I think one of the other things that we do really well around this is acknowledging what is worth it for now and what we're not willing to compromise on. So an example of that is that neither of us will ever give up coffee because it compromises the lifestyle that we want to live, not just now, but in the future. And the same for travel. Like, it's so high on our priorities and it just isn't worth giving up now so that we might be able to have the lifestyle in the future. That's just a compromise we're not willing to make. But with that in mind, we have really great transparency over how much our current lifestyle costs and what our future lifestyle will cost too.
So tank number 7 is the world. So the secret to living is giving. So do you feel like you're lacking some purpose outside of yourself? And what does being on this planet really mean? Why are we here? What are we doing? So sometimes our relationships can feel a little same and lack a bit of purpose outside the two of you. The world is a really big place with some really big problems to solve, and contributing to one or more of the causes that you care about can really light the fire in your bellies and bring you so much joy. So spending some time thinking outside of yourself can spark motivation to contribute to change and to contribute to some bigger causes. So thriving couples know what they care about and contribute to causes and the world regularly. So this tank's all about having a vision for the kind of world that you want to create and regularly contributing our time, money, energy, and resources to the causes that we care about. It's about having goals that are bigger than ourselves and being aligned with causes or charities that are really meaningful to us. It's also about the little daily practices that we do to support the UN global goals, such as using a keep cup, recycling, using reusable shopping bags, and all those micro little habits that we can do day to day. So for the world, although Fuel Collective has a big vision and mission for creating a better world, I think in our day-to-day lives, what we've found really works for us is layering all these little micro habits on top of each other to create a better world. So, it started out with simple things like recycling and making sure that we were really conscious about what we were recycling, that we're recycling properly, that we're not putting non-recyclables into the bin and things like that. And layering on top of that other little micro habits, like collecting the shower water while the water's getting up to temperature and using that for watering the plants and things like that to make sure that we're saving some of the natural resources that we have and just being a bit conscious of the resources that we're consuming.
I think one of the other things that we do really well in terms of the world is we do fly the flag for the UN Global Goals a lot. Even our unofficial ambassador role of talking about creating a better world and what a better world might look like and what are some of the problems that we need to solve to get there for everyone, and then contributing to projects in alignment with those things. Well, it definitely helps me feel like I have a bigger purpose. Tank number 8 is the future. So it isn't waiting for us, it is created by us. I don't know about you, but if you've ever had the thought, that's future me's problem, well, that is still you. And the future will thank past you if you've thought about it and talked about some of the big things, like where do you want to live? What kind of lifestyle do you want to have? How much money will be in the bank? And which ones of the 7 wonders of the world have we seen? Having some of those really big conversations and dreaming really big can uncover some of the shared milestones that you and your partner might have that help you get motivated to set some goals and then put plans in place to actually achieve them. So this tank is all about discussing the future, making sure that you're on the same page for the big things to come, having a really clear 10-year vision for the future, understanding the future lifestyle costs that you're stretching for, and knowing the gap between where you are right now and where you want to be.
So the future is a big deal for us, and we want to make sure that we're actively planning our future and not just letting whatever happen. So we do this through our annual game plan, and once a year, we really take the opportunity to sit down, look ahead, see what we want to create, where we're heading, where we currently are, and what we need to do to get to that big vision and to create the future that we want to have. So this framework of the 8 fuel tanks and the Fueled Up Life methodology has really been so helpful in our own relationship to kind of diagnose where we're at any one point in time and understand which areas of our relationship need a little extra loving at any one point in time.
So with each episode of the Date Forever podcast, we generally give to a project that our guests really care about. Today, there's no guests. It's just me and Nath. So what we're going to do is something a little bit special. On our website, fuelcollective.com.au, we have taken the Fueled Up Life methodology and turned it into a quiz. So we go through these 8 different fuel tanks. Yeah, we ask you what you're doing really well, what maybe you just started doing, or if you're not doing it at all. At the end of the quiz, it spits out a report for you so that you can see what areas of your life might need a little bit more loving and what you're already nailing. Because we believe better relationships will equal a better world, anytime someone completes the quiz, we provide 1 day of early childhood education for a child in Kenya. But what Nath and I would love to do is for the next month, the next 30 days, Anyone who completes the quiz, we are going to double that give. So we will provide 2 days of early childhood education for a child in Kenya. So head on over to fuelcollective.com.au/quiz and figure out which ones of your tanks are rocking. And you'll not just be on your way to a better relationship, but you'll be part of creating a better world. And we're able to make all of that possible via our partnership with Buy One, Give One.
And if you're loving this style of episode with the two of us, make sure you hit us up, Nathan at fuelcollective.com.au or Sammi at fuelcollective.com.au. And we love seeing where you're listening from too, so make sure you share on socials and tag us on Insta at Date Forever. Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.